Welcome back to another episode of our CELPIP video series. We're going to look at task 1 in the speaking test again. If you haven't watched our sample questions and responses, I strongly recommend that you watch the videos. You can find them in our CELPIP video playlist. As you know, in this section, you're given 30 seconds in the beginning to prepare, and you need to speak for the next 90 seconds. If you remember, in task 1, you have to give advice to another person, and I would like to show you a structured response which I hope will help you if you feel that you often don't know what you have to say in the test. And here you can see the structure of the response that I'm going to discuss. The answer that you will give consists of 5 components. You can think of them during the preparation time. First, you will start with the introduction. And second, you will say why you're the right person to give advice. Then you will give your advice followed by the reasons. If you have another suggestion, you can also add that after you finish with your first answer. And for a topic where you have to choose between 2 options, you can discuss the downside of the second option. Once you're done with that, you will give your closing statement. We'll talk about each one, and then at the end, you will see a full script of a sample response using the technique described here. Here's a sample question that we're going to use while I'm going through the structure with you. A friend is moving out of his parents' house, and he's not sure if he should live alone or with the roommate. Give advice to your friend. You will have to give a 90-second response. And now, let's take a look at them one by one. First, the introduction. Because this is a response in a conversation, we want to make the answer natural rather than formal. I've come up with several responses that you can definitely use in your answer. Keep in mind that you may want to use the appropriate response depending on the question. These are just some examples, so don't just plainly memorize them. You need to know which response is suitable for the topic. For example, the first 3 responses are suitable for a difficult situation. However, the last 2 can be used for a situation when someone asks for advice, opinion, or suggestion about something that's not necessarily difficult or something that's actually a problem. For example, advice on what to do on the weekend, which country to visit, and so on. Into the second part, explaining why you qualify to give advice. You can say that you had to do the same thing recently, or you had the exact same problem, or you've been thinking about the same question. And here are some sentences that I made that you can use in many different topics. By the way, if you need to prepare for the test, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more CELPIP materials. Now, let's get back to what we were talking about. Once you explain your qualification, you can continue by giving your advice. To do this, you can use the following phrases. I suggest that you live alone. I recommend living with a roommate. If I were you, I would find a place of my own. Of course, you will explain why you give that particular advice, and you can practice explaining using these sentences. And here are some examples. It is because living with others is more cost-effective. You may be wondering why living alone is better. In my opinion, the freedom that you will have is totally worth spending more money. And if you have more than one suggestion, you can continue with the next one and use the same structure. Give the advice and then follow up by an explanation. In a case where you have to make a choice, after you give your opinion and explanation, you should discuss the downside of the other option. Rather than memorizing them, try to use them every time you practice. And for this part, you can say, you may think living alone is a good idea, but have you actually thought how much that would cost? I have to say living with others is not a bad idea either. But when you live with someone else that you may not know well, there's a pretty good chance you'll run into some problems. Now, we're almost done with our structured response. We just have the closing left. In fact, if you have a long response, it's possible that you may run out of time before you give your closing statement. Don't panic if that happens. In that situation, you can either not give a closing statement or just make one sentence to end your response. Here are some examples again. Okay, those are the 5 components of the response that I'd like to share with you. If you feel overwhelmed, don't worry, keep practicing, and we'll also continue to give you tips and tricks to help you ace this test. And before I finish the video, let's take a look at one example of the response using the technique we just learned together. You're going to hear the full response from the beginning all the way to the end. Here we go.
Hey Sam, I'm glad you asked me. I think I can give you some helpful advice. Last year, I faced a similar situation. After I graduated from high school, I went to college out of town, so I couldn't stay at my parents' place. I suggest that you find a shared accommodation when you move out. The reason is that this is your first time living away from your family. You may need some time to adjust, and when you move to a shared accommodation, the place usually has the essential things that you need when you first move in. You won't have to buy everything right away on your first day there. You can take your time to think and decide what you need to buy. Obviously, the rent will be cheaper too. You don't have a job yet, right? By living with someone else, you can save a bit of money. I have to say living alone is not a bad idea either. But you told me that you took a student loan. It would be wise if you try to save money whenever you can. The sooner you pay off your student loan, the better it is. It's quite stressful when you think about your student loan after you graduate. I hope what I just told you helps you make up your mind. I wish you all the best.
That's all, folks. And stay tuned for more CELPIP videos. And don't forget to hit the like button if you find this video helpful.